The drought had finally broken them. Clara Benton stood frozen in the doorway as her brother Thomas avoided her eyes, his words hanging between them like a death sentence. The labor auction. Today, it's the only way. 3 days of food remained. The farm that had sustained generations would die within the month. And Clara, too fat for any man to want, too burdensome for charity, would be auctioned like livestock to whoever needed kitchen help. The wagon ride to town stretched endless under the merciless sun. Each turn of the wheels carried her closer to the platform where human dignity went to die. The townspeople were already gathering, their whispers following her like vultures. The Benton girl. Who'd bid on that? Cost more to feed her than she'd earn. Clara raised her chin, her mother's cameo brooch trembling at her throat. If she must stand on that platform, she would stand tall. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. The auction platform creaked under Clara's weight, and someone in the crowd snickered. The sound spread like wildfire through the gathered townspeople, transforming from isolated chuckles into open laughter. The auctioneer, a thin man with pomaded hair that gleamed in the afternoon sun, raised his hands for silence with theatrical flair. Gentlemen, what we have here is Clara Benton, offering her services for household work. He paused, his eyes glinting with cruel humor. Now, I'll warn you, fair feeding her might cost you half your wages. The crowd roared. Someone near the spittoon called out, 2 bits for the comedy show. Clara's fingers found her mother's cameo brooch, its smooth surface a lifeline to dignity. She kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, past the weathered storefronts, past the laughing faces, to where the mountains rose blue and distant. Her legs trembled, but she locked her knees, refusing to show weakness. Come now, surely someone needs a cook. The auctioneer's voice turned wheedling. She can peel potatoes, scrub floors. Can she fit through a doorway? Another voice from the crowd, followed by more laughter. Thomas stood at the platform's edge, his face red. Whether from shame or sun, Clara couldn't tell. He'd brought her here, her own brother, who she'd fed and mended for, whose book she'd kept when he couldn't cipher beyond basic addition. The betrayal cut deeper than any stranger's mockery. $5 for the month. The auctioneer tried again, his voice dropping. 3. Surely $3 for a month's labor. Stop! The single word cut through the noise like a knife through butter. The crowd turned toward the back, where a man stepped forward from the shadows of Morrison's general store. He moved with a slight limp, favoring his left leg, but his stride held purpose. Ethan Cole. Clara knew him by reputation, only the rancher who'd lost his wife and daughter to scarlet fever 3 winters back, who'd withdrawn to his ranch and rarely came to town. His worn leather vest had seen better days, and his face bore the weathered lines of a man who'd known both hard work and harder loss. But his eyes, gray as a storm sky, held a fury that made the crowd step back. This isn't a damn circus show. His voice stayed low, controlled, but something in it made the laughter die completely. The auctioneer shifted nervously. Now, Mr. Cole, this is a legal auction. Ethan reached the platform and pulled out a leather pouch from his vest. The crowd watched, mesmerized, as he upended it on the auctioneer's table. Silver dollars spilled out, catching the light, followed by carefully folded banknotes. More money than most had seen at once. $150, Ethan said. The lady's coming with me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That was 6 months' wages for most men. A fortune in these drought-stricken times. The auctioneer's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. But the bidding is over. Ethan's scarred hands, Clara noticed the burn marks now, probably from pulling timber from a fire, rested on the table. Unless someone wants to bid higher. Silence. Then we're done here. He turned to Clara, and for the first time since he'd appeared, his expression softened slightly. Ma'am, if you'll come with me. Clara found herself looking into those storm-gray eyes, seeing something unexpected there. Not pity, Not charity, not the cruel amusement she'd grown accustomed to. Recognition, perhaps. One broken soul acknowledging another. She descended the platform steps carefully, her legs still shaking. The crowd parted, their earlier cruelty replaced by stunned silence. When she reached the ground, Ethan gestured toward the side of the platform, away from the gawking faces. "We need to talk terms," he said quietly, leading her to the relative privacy behind the platform, where empty crates and barrels provided a screen from curious eyes. Clara found her voice. "Mr. Cole, I don't understand. That money is an investment, not a purchase." He removed his hat, revealing dark hair shot through with premature gray. "I need help at my ranch, real help. Cooking. Yes, but also books, accounts. I can't." He paused, looking away. "I can't make sense of numbers the way I used to. Since the fever took them, I can't seem to focus on anything longer than a minute. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you fair wages, $15 monthly plus room and board. You work for me, not because I bought you, but because we have an agreement. You can leave any time you choose." He met her eyes again. "Nobody should stand up there like livestock. Nobody." Clara felt something crack inside her chest, a wall she'd built against hope. "Why?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "Because I know what it's like when folks look at you and see something broken. Something to pity or mock." He replaced his hat. "But I also know that broken doesn't mean worthless. Sometimes the broken things are the ones that understand what it means to still be standing." He extended his hand, not to shake, but palm up, an offer rather than a demand. "Will you come with me, Miss Benton? Help me save my ranch while I help you escape this—" Clara looked at his scarred hand, then back at the platform where the auctioneer was already calling the next person. Her brother had disappeared into the crowd, probably to drink away his shame at the saloon. She had nothing to go back to, and here was a man offering her dignity along with wages. She placed her hand in his. "It's Clara, and yes, Mr. Cole. I'll come." The wagon rolled west out of town, wheels cutting deep ruts in the drought-hardened road. Clara sat as far to her side of the bench as possible, conscious of every bump that might shift her weight toward Ethan Cole. He drove with steady hands, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun was beginning its afternoon descent. For the first mile, neither spoke. Clara clutched her small carpet bag hastily packed that morning when she'd thought she'd be going to some farmstead as a kitchen drudge. The reality of what had just happened began to settle over her like dust. This stranger had paid a fortune for her freedom, and now she was heading to his ranch with nothing but his word that she wasn't trading one form of servitude for another. "The Double C is about 5 miles out," Ethan finally said, his voice cutting through the wagon's creaking. "Been in my family for 20 years. My father built it up from nothing." Clara nodded, unsure how to respond. She'd heard of the Double C Ranch, knew it had been prosperous once, before the fever. "I need to be straight with you," he continued, still not looking at her. "The ranch is struggling. Has been since—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "Since I lost them. I've kept the cattle alive, kept the basic operations going, but the business side, the contracts, the ledgers, the negotiations, I can't seem to make my mind work through them anymore." "Grief does that," Clara said quietly, surprising herself with the words. Ethan glanced at her, a flash of something gratitude, perhaps in his gray eyes. "That it does. You lose someone. My mother, 2 years back, consumption." Clara shifted the carpetbag on her lap. "I did the books for our farm after that. Thomas never had a head for numbers. Your brother seemed eager enough to be rid of you." The blunt observation should have stung, but Clara appreciated the honesty. "The drought hit everyone hard. I suppose I was one mouth too many." "His loss." Ethan's tone held finality. as if the matter was settled and Thomas Benton no longer existed in his world. They turned off the main road onto a narrower track lined with cottonwood trees. Despite the drought, these were still green, suggesting water nearby. Clara's practical mind began cataloging details. Good water access meant the ranch had better chances than most. The double C came into view as they crested a small rise. Clara's first impression was of good bones beneath visible neglect. The main house stood solid, built of timber and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around two sides, but the steps sagged, and one shutter hung loose. The barn beyond needed painting, and several fence posts in the nearest corral tilted at tired angles. "I know it doesn't look like much," Ethan said, a note of defensiveness creeping into his voice. "It looks like a ranch that's been waiting," Clara replied. "Sometimes places just need attention to remember what they're supposed to be." Ethan pulled the wagon up to the house and set the brake. He climbed down first, then surprised Clara by offering his hand to help her descend. Most people assumed her weight meant she didn't deserve such courtesies. "I'll show you around," he said, grabbing her carpet bag before she could protest. The inside of the house reflected the outside solid construction fighting against neglect. The front room held good furniture covered in dust, and Clara noted the fine craftsmanship of the rocking chair near the cold fireplace. The kitchen, though, made her heart sink. Dirty dishes towered in the dry sink, and the cast-iron stove bore the burnt remnants of countless failed meals. "I mostly eat cold beans," Ethan admitted, setting her bag down. "Sometimes bread from town when I remember to buy it." Clara walked to the stove, running her hand along its surface. A good stove, well made. It just needed proper care. "What supplies do you have?" He opened a cupboard, revealing a meager collection flour. Salt, some questionable lard, dried beans, a sack of potatoes sprouting eyes, and surprisingly, a jar of preserved peaches. "My wife put those up," he said quietly, nodding at the peaches. "Last batch she made before. I haven't been able to open them." Clara turned from the cupboard and saw him standing near a small table, staring at a photograph on the wall. A beautiful woman with kind eyes stood beside a younger version of Ethan. A little girl with ribbons in her hair between them. "Margaret and Sophie," he said. Sophie was 6. They were beautiful. They were everything. He turned away abruptly. "Your room is upstairs. First door on the right. There's a wash basin and pitcher. The necessary is out back. I'll let you settle in while I see to the horses." He left quickly, his boots heavy on the porch steps. Clara understood the retreat. Sometimes grief ambushed you when you least expected it, and the only response was to flee until you could breathe again. She climbed the narrow stairs, finding the room he'd indicated. It was clean, surprisingly so compared to the kitchen, with a brass bed, a simple dresser, and a window overlooking the ranch yard. Someone, Ethan, she realized, had put fresh linens on the bed and a towel beside the wash basin. He'd prepared for her, or for someone, at least. After washing the dust from her face and hands, Clara returned to the kitchen. She rolled up her sleeves and set to work. First, she heated water on the stove, blessing whoever had installed the hand pump right in the kitchen, a luxury many farms lacked. While the water heated, she cleared the dirty dishes, swept the floor, and took inventory of what she had to work with. By the time Ethan returned, the kitchen had transformed. The dishes were washed and drying, the stove gleamed black, and the smell of baking biscuits filled the air. Clara stood at the stove, stirring a pot of beans she'd rescued with onions from the garden and a ham bone she'd found wrapped in the cold box. Ethan stopped in the doorway, his eyes widening. "You did all this in an hour?" "A kitchen wants to be used," Clara said, not turning from the stove. "It's happier when it's doing what it was made for." She'd also made a decision about the peaches. They sat opened on the table, spooned over the fresh biscuits. A small act of resurrection. Ethan's gaze landed on them, and his breath caught. "You opened them. They were meant to be eaten. Mr. Cole? Your wife wouldn't have wanted them to sit there forever." Clara finally turned to face him. I hope I didn't overstep. Ethan sank into a chair at the table, staring at the golden peaches like they might disappear. No, no, you're right. Margaret would have said the same thing, would have scolded me for letting them sit so long. Clara served the simple meal beans, biscuits, and the precious peaches. She watched Ethan take the first bite, saw his eyes close as the sweetness hit his tongue. When he opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "Tastes like home," he said roughly. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Ethan pushed a ledger across the table toward Clara. "These are the ranch accounts," he said, "or what I've managed to keep track of. I know I'm behind on something, but every time I try to focus on the numbers, they swim around like fish in a pond." Clara opened the ledger, immediately seeing the problem. Entries stopped and started, some recorded twice, others missing entirely. But beneath the chaos, she could see the bones of a system. "I can fix this," she said, "but I'll need all your receipts, contracts, correspondence with buyers. It's all in the office. Desk is probably buried under papers." Ethan rubbed his face. "I used to be good at this. My father taught me to keep proper books. But now you're grieving," Clara said gently. "The mind protects itself sometimes by refusing to focus on things that don't immediately matter for survival." Ethan studied her. "You sound like you know something about that." "After my mother died, I couldn't read for 3 months. The letters just wouldn't hold still. But it came back. When I was ready." She closed the ledger. "Mr. Cole, about our arrangement. $15 a month, plus room and board. Like I said, you cook, keep house, and handle the books. But you're free to leave whenever you choose. This isn't..." He struggled for words. "What happened in town today, that's not what this is." "I know." And surprisingly, she did. Something about Ethan Cole rang true as a church bell. "But I need to know what happens when you don't need me anymore, when the books are straight and you remember how to do them yourself." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, then met her eyes directly. "Miss Clara, the way I see it, the Double C hasn't been a proper ranch since I lost them. Maybe having someone here who understands what it means to keep going when everything's broken. Maybe that's what both of us need, not just for a few months, but for as long as it takes to remember how to live again." Clara felt that crack in her chest widen, letting in a dangerous sliver of hope. "Then we have an agreement, Mr. Cole." "Ethan," he corrected. "If we're going to save this ranch together, you should call me Ethan." "Ethan," she agreed, the name feeling strange but right on her tongue. "And I'm just Clara." He stood, extending his hand formally across the table. This time when they shook, it felt like a real partnership beginning. "Tomorrow, we start early," Ethan said. "I'll show you the rest of the ranch, introduce you to the hands, all 2 of them who stayed, and we can start sorting through those papers." Clara nodded, already planning. She'd need to understand the full scope of the ranch's operations, its debts and assets, before she could create a plan. But for the first time in years, she felt she had a real purpose. As Ethan headed to the door, he paused. "Clara, thank you for the peaches, for understanding they needed to be eaten. Everything has its season, Ethan, even grief." He nodded and left, his footsteps fading toward the smaller foreman's cabin where she assumed he'd taken up residence. Clara remained at the table, surrounded by the clean kitchen and the empty jar that had held 3-year-old peaches. Outside, the sun set over the Double C Ranch, painting the neglected buildings gold. Tomorrow, she would begin the real work of restoration. Not just of ledgers and accounts, but of a life interrupted by loss. 2 broken people trying to build something whole from the pieces left behind. Clara woke before dawn on her 3rd day at the Double C, her internal clock already adjusted to ranch rhythms. She dressed quickly in her most practical dress and made her way downstairs by lamplight. The kitchen still held yesterday's warmth, and she had coffee brewing before Ethan appeared in the doorway, surprise evident on his weathered face. "You're up early?" he said, accepting the cup she offered. "I want to tackle those papers today." Clara poured her own coffee, adding a precious spoonful of sugar. "The office you mentioned. Through here." Ethan led her to a door off the main room that she hadn't explored yet. When he opened it, Clara understood why he'd avoided this space. Papers covered every surface the desk, 2 chairs, even portions of the floor. Receipts were stabbed onto a bent nail in the wall, contracts lay scattered like fallen leaves, and 3 years of correspondence teetered in unstable piles. "I kept meaning to organize it," Ethan said, his voice tight with embarrassment. "But after Margaret, she used to help with this." Clara stepped into the chaos, her mind already cataloging and sorting. "Would you bring me all the lamps you can spare, and that box of empty ledgers I saw in the storage room?" For the next 6 hours, Clara worked with the focused intensity of someone who'd found their purpose. She created systems where none existed, separated cattle sales from supply purchases, extracted correspondence from buyers and sorted it chronologically. The steel pen scratched steadily as she transcribed numbers from crumpled receipts into neat columns. By noon, a horrifying picture had emerged. Ethan returned with lunch, cold beef and bread, to find Clara surrounded by organized stacks, her fingers stained with ink, studying a particular set of papers with a deep frown. "What is it?" he asked. Clara looked up, her round face grave. "Ethan, when did you last pay the mortgage?" He set down the plate, running a hand through his hair. There's a mortgage Pa never mentioned. He took it out 4 years ago, probably for improvements." Clara held up the original contract. "The bank's been sending notices. They're all here, unopened." She gestured to a pile of cream-colored envelopes. "According to the latest one, you have 3 months before foreclosure." The blood drained from Ethan's face. He sank into the chair she'd cleared, staring at the papers as if they might attack. 3 months, maybe less. This notice is 3 weeks old. Clara pulled out another ledger. "But there's hope. Your cattle are undervalued in these sales receipts. You've been accepting whatever Barrett and the other buyers offer, haven't you?" "I don't have Margaret's head for negotiation. I just take what seems fair." Clara snorted, a surprisingly indelicate sound. "Fair, Ethan. Based on these bloodline registries, your cattle are worth 30% more than you've been getting. These buyers saw you grieving and took advantage. You understand cattle prices." Ethan's voice held wonder. "My uncle raised cattle before he died. I spent summers helping with his books, learning the bloodlines." Clara pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. "There's a sale tomorrow in town. How many head can you spare?" 20, maybe 25. "Bring 30. I'm coming with you." Ethan started to protest, then stopped. "The buyers won't negotiate with a woman." "They will when that woman knows the difference between a standard Longhorn and a Hereford crossbreed, and exactly what they're selling for in Denver." Clara's chin lifted, reminding Ethan of how she'd stood on that auction platform. "Trust me." The next morning dawned clear and hot. Clara dressed in her best remaining dress, a dark blue cotton that Margaret would have approved of, and pinned her hair severely back. She looked like a schoolmarm or a banker's secretary, exactly the image she wanted to project. The cattle sale took place in the stockyards at the edge of town, a sprawling maze of pens and chutes where the air hung thick with dust and the lowing of cattle. Buyers gathered near the main pen, most of them in city suits despite the rural setting. Telegrams from eastern markets clutched in their hands. Barrett stood at the center, a large man with graying whiskers and a reputation for driving hard bargains. He noticed Ethan approaching and smiled the smile of a wolf spotting a limping deer. "Cole didn't expect you this month. What have you got?" 30 head, mixed ages, good condition despite the drought." Barrett was already shaking his head. "Can't give you more than 15 a head in this market. Drought's got everyone selling." 25, Clara said clearly, stepping out from behind Ethan. Every head turned. Barrett's eyes narrowed as he recognized her. "The Benton girl, Cole. What's this about? Miss Benton handles my accounts now, Ethan said steadily. She speaks for the double C in business matters. The laughter that rippled through the gathered buyers had an uncertain edge. Barrett's smile turned condescending. Little lady, this is men's business. Why don't I explain why you're trying to cheat Mr. Cole? Clara pulled out a telegram from her pocket, one she'd had Ethan send to Denver yesterday. Current market price for standard longhorns in Denver is $22, but these aren't standard. She walked to the pen, pointing at specific animals. That's a Hereford cross, see the white face and stockier build, worth $28 at least. Those three are Durham Longhorn crosses. Excellent beef cattle. $30 in any fair market. The laughter died. Barrett's face reddened. You can't possibly. The red bull there. His sire was Mighty Sam out of the Thornton Ranch. I have the breeding certificate. Clara produced the paper with a flourish. His offspring are selling for $35 in Kansas City. A younger buyer, Harrison, stepped forward. Is this true? Cole, Ethan, who'd been watching Clara with amazement, nodded. Every word? Miss Benton has the documentation. Then I'll take 10 head at 28, Harrison said quickly. 30, Clara countered. Or Mr. Barrett can have them at 32. Barrett's face went from red to purple. Highway robbery. It's market price for quality cattle, which you've been underpaying for since Mrs. Cole passed. Clara's voice turned steel. Would you like me to calculate what you owe for the last 2 years of sales? The threat hung in the air. These men all knew each other, did business together. If word got out that Barrett had been systematically cheating a grieving widower— 30, Barrett ground out. For all 30 head. Clara shook her head. Mr. Harrison offered first. He gets 10 at 30. You can have 15 at 32. The remaining 5 go to Mr. Foster at 33, if he's interested. Foster, an older buyer who'd been watching with amusement, nodded. Done, Miss Benton. As the buyers dispersed to arrange payment, Barrett stepped close to Clara, his voice low and threatening. You've made a mistake, girl. No one crosses me in this town. I'm not crossing you, Clara replied calmly. I'm conducting business. If you'd prefer not to buy from the Double C anymore, I'm sure the Denver buyers would be happy to deal directly. Where'd you learn cattle? Miss Barrett's question came out reluctantly, as if pulled by pliers. My uncle, Josiah Winters. Maybe you heard of him. He supplied the army post before he died. Barrett's eyes widened. Josiah Winters had been legendary for his cattle knowledge and his ruthless negotiation. You're Winters' kin, his favorite niece. He taught me everything. Clara allowed herself a small smile, including how to spot a buyer who's trying to create a local monopoly. Barrett left without another word, but Harrison lingered. Miss Benton, I run honest dealings. I'd be pleased to work with the Double C regular-like. That evening, Clara spread the bank drafts on Ethan's kitchen table like a winning poker hand. $900 for 30 cattle, almost double what Ethan would have accepted. How? Ethan kept staring at the numbers. Barrett's never paid more than 18 a head. Because you never asked for more. Clara pulled out her ledger, showing the calculations. At this rate, we can pay the mortgage current in 2 months, maybe less if we sell your furniture too. My furniture. Clara gestured toward the main room. That rocking chair is quality work. I saw the pieces in your workshop too. There's a market for handmade furniture, especially with the railroad bringing wealthy folks through town. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, studying her ink-stained fingers as they traced columns of numbers. You saved us $300 today. $350, Clara corrected. Harrison will be back next month, and Foster asked about purchasing calves come spring. If we play them against each other, maintain quality, we can stabilize the ranch's income. Clara. Ethan's voice held something new, something warm that made her look up. I hired you for cooking and simple bookkeeping. This is something else entirely. Are you complaining? No. His gray eyes held hers. I'm thanking God you were on that platform, and cursing myself for not seeing it sooner. You're not just competent. You're brilliant. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. No one had ever called her brilliant. Fat? Yes. Useless? Often. But brilliant, I just understand numbers and cattle. You understand business? You understand people? Ethan leaned back in his chair, shaking his head in wonder. Barrett's been cheating me for 2 years, and you destroyed his scheme in 10 minutes. He'll be trouble, Clara warned. Let him try. For the first time since she'd met him, Ethan Cole smiled fully, the expression transforming his grief-worn face. He'll have to go through you first, and frankly, I'd bet on you any day. Clara ducked her head to hide her own smile, focusing on the ledgers. But inside, something long dormant was awakening. She'd spent years being told she was too much, too fat, too plain, too forthright, too... But here, in this kitchen that she'd restored to life, sitting across from a man who saw her worth in numbers and courage rather than pounds and pretty faces, she felt something she'd never experienced. She felt valued. More than that, she felt essential. Tomorrow, she said, closing the ledger with satisfaction. We start on those furniture orders. I have ideas about marketing to the railroad passengers. Ethan laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Of course you do. God help me. Of course you do. 2 weeks into their arrangement, Ethan found Clara standing at the corral fence, watching the horses with an expression of longing mixed with apprehension. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ranch yard, and the air held the crisp promise of autumn's approach. You want to learn to ride, he said. Not a question, but an observation. Clara's hands tightened on the fence rail. It's not practical. A woman of my size would do better checking the outer pastures on horseback than on foot. Ethan interrupted. If you're going to help run this ranch proper, you need to know the whole operation. That means riding. Ethan, be realistic. I'd break the poor animal's back. He studied her for a moment, then whistled sharply. A golden mare separated from the herd, walking over with calm assurance. This is Buttercup. She's a Belgian draft cross. Her mother pulled logging wagons in the mountains. She could carry 2 of you without noticing. Buttercup was indeed substantial, with a broad back and sturdy legs that spoke of strength rather than speed. The mare lowered her massive head to snuffle at Clara's dress pocket, clearly hoping for treats. She's beautiful, Clara breathed, tentatively stroking the velvet nose. She's also steady as a mountain and smarter than most people I know. Ethan opened the corral gate. Come on. We'll start with getting you comfortable around her. For the next hour, he taught Clara the basics: how to approach Buttercup, where to touch and where to avoid, how to read the horse's body language. Clara's initial fear gradually gave way to fascination as she learned to brush the mare's coat until it gleamed like honey in the sun. I'll need to modify a saddle, Ethan mused, studying both horse and potential rider. Not a side saddle exactly, those are useless for real ranch work, but something that'll give you proper support. You don't have to go to that trouble. It's not trouble. It's solving a problem. He was already walking toward the barn, mind clearly working through the challenge. I've got an old cavalry saddle that might work with some adjustments. 3 days later, he presented his solution, a modified saddle with a broader seat and adjusted stirrups that would distribute weight evenly. Clara ran her hands over the leather, noting the careful stitching where he'd made alterations. You did this yourself. Learned leather work from my father. Comes in handy. Ethan's voice was casual, but Clara caught the pleased look when she admired his craftsmanship. Ready to try? The first mounting attempt was a disaster. Clara's skirts tangled, her weight shifted wrong, and she ended up grabbing Buttercup's mane in panic while Ethan steadied her from below. But Buttercup stood patient as a saint, occasionally turning her head as if to check on her nervous rider. Again, Ethan said simply when Clara wanted to quit. Rome wasn't built in a day. By the 4th day of lessons, Clara could mount without assistance and walk Buttercup around the corral. By the end of the week, she was trotting, her initial terror replaced by exhilaration. "I'm doing it!" she called out, unable to suppress her joy as Buttercup completed another circuit. Ethan's face broke into the fullest smile she'd seen from him, transforming his usually somber features. "You're a natural. Must be those Winters genes." That afternoon, after successfully riding to the near pasture and back, Clara was putting Buttercup away when she noticed a door at the back of the barn she hadn't explored. Wood shavings littered the threshold. "What's back there?" she asked Ethan, who was repairing a harness nearby. He hesitated. "My workshop. May I see?" Another pause. Then he set down the harness. "I suppose." The workshop took Clara's breath away. In the golden afternoon light filtering through high windows, pieces of furniture in various stages of completion stood like sculptures. A half-finished rocking chair showed elaborate carved roses along its back. A small table bore intricate inlay work creating a pattern of leaves and vines. The craftsmanship rivaled anything she'd seen in the finest Denver shops. "Ethan," she whispered, running her fingers along a bureau with carved deer leaping across its drawers. "These are extraordinary." He stood in the doorway, hands shoved in his pockets. "Started making pieces for Margaret when we were courting. Kept at it after we married. Then when the fever took them." He trailed off, gesturing at the workshop. "Can't sleep most nights. This gives my hands something to do besides remembering." Clara noticed the small pieces, then a child's chair with carved rabbits, a toy chest decorated with fairy tale scenes. Items begun for a daughter who would never use them. "How many pieces do you have?" "Dozen. Maybe more. Keep starting new ones when the old memories get too loud. We could sell these for $50 each, maybe more." Clara turned to face him. "There's a market in Denver for handcrafted furniture. The railroad brings buyers through regular. They're not for sale." "Why not?" Ethan was quiet so long Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, "Feels like selling off pieces of myself. Or them." Clara approached him slowly, the way she'd learned to approach Buttercup. Would Margaret want them gathering dust, or would she want them in homes, being used and cherished? "You've got an answer for everything, don't you?" But his voice held no anger, only a kind of wondering resignation. "I've got suggestions. You make the decisions." Clara moved to a completed rocking chair, testing its smooth motion. "This is too beautiful to hide in a barn. That one was supposed to be for—" Ethan stopped, swallowed. "For the next baby." Margaret wanted more children. The pain in his voice made Clara's chest ache. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand where it gripped the doorframe. "Then let it serve its purpose. Let some other mother rock her babies in it. Let it bring joy instead of gathering sorrow." Ethan looked down at her hand on his, and Clara started to pull away, embarrassed by her forwardness. But he turned his palm up, briefly squeezing her fingers before letting go. "Maybe," he said. "Let me think on it." That evening, after supper, Ethan surprised Clara by suggesting they sit on the porch. The heat had broken, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage from the hills. Clara had made coffee with chicory, the way her mother used to, and they sat in companionable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky purple and gold. "Tell me about your uncle," Ethan said suddenly. "The cattle king." Clara smiled at the memory. "Uncle Josiah was larger than life. Not just in body, he was a big man, but in personality. He'd storm into a room and everyone would stop to listen. He taught me that being large meant taking up space unapologetically." "Wise man." "He was." When the other girls were learning embroidery, he had me studying bloodline charts and market reports. Said I had a mind too good to waste on pretty samplers. Clara sipped her coffee. Father was scandalized. Proper young ladies didn't discuss cattle breeding. What did your mother think? She understood Josiah saw something in me others missed. Told me once that being overlooked could be a gift. It let you learn things while people assumed you weren't paying attention. Ethan chuckled, a warm sound in the gathering darkness. That explains your negotiation tactics. Barrett never saw you coming. He saw me. He just didn't think I mattered. Clara set down her cup. People see what they expect. A fat woman at a cattle sale must be someone's wife. Killing time. Couldn't possibly understand the business. Their blindness is our gain. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something personal? Clara tensed. You can ask. Your brother, has he always treated you that way? The question hung between them like a challenge. Clara considered deflecting, then decided on truth. Thomas wasn't always cruel, just weak. After Mother died and the farm started failing, he needed someone to blame. I was convenient, and you stayed. Where would I go? A woman like me doesn't have many options. She gestured at herself with bitter humor. Too fat to marry, too educated for service, too poor for independence. You're not too anything, Ethan said firmly. You're exactly enough of everything. The words stunned Clara into silence. In the dim light, she couldn't read his expression, but his tone had held absolute conviction. I mean it, he continued. In 2 weeks, you've brought more life to this ranch than I've managed in 3 years. You've got Barrett running scared, the books finally make sense, and... He paused. And the house feels like a home again. That's just cooking and cleaning? No. Ethan turned to face her fully. It's presence. Purpose. You walk into a room and suddenly things matter again. Like you did with the workshop seeing possibilities where I only saw pain. Clara felt tears threatening, overwhelmed by being truly seen for perhaps the first time in her life. You gave me the chance. You looked at me on that platform and saw a person, not a joke. I saw someone refusing to break despite everyone trying to break her. Reminded me of myself, those first months after. He stood abruptly. Speaking of the workshop, I've been thinking about what you said, about the furniture. And start with one piece, that rocking chair. See if anyone actually wants it. Clara smiled in the darkness. I'll write to the furniture dealers in Denver tomorrow. Include sketches of your work. You can draw too, Uncle Josiah insisted. Said you needed to be able to sketch cattle conformations for breeding records. She stood as well, gathering the coffee cups. I'll teach you, if you'd like. Fair trade for the riding lessons? Fair trade, Ethan agreed. Then, as Clara turned to go inside, Clara, thank you for making me think beyond just surviving each day. Same to you, she said softly, for seeing me as more than what everyone else sees. Later, as Clara lay in bed listening to the ranch settling for the night, she heard the distant sound of sandpaper on wood from the barn. Ethan was in his workshop, but this time not fleeing memories. This time, perhaps, preparing to let his beautiful creations find new homes and new purposes. Tomorrow she would ride Buttercup to check the south pasture alone, proving to herself and everyone else that a fat woman could be a rancher. She would write those letters to Denver furniture dealers. She would continue transforming the Double C from a place of mere survival into something thriving. But tonight, she held close Ethan's words, exactly enough of everything. For the first time in her life, Clara Benton believed that might actually be true. The moon rose full over the ranch, silvering the cottonwoods and casting long shadows across the yard. In the barn, the sandpaper's rhythm continued, steady as a heartbeat, while in the house Clara drifted to sleep planning futures that suddenly seemed possible. The sound of approaching hoofbeats interrupted Clara's morning bookkeeping. Through the office window, she saw a man in a black suit dismounting from a hired buggy, a leather portfolio under his arm. Everything about him screamed bank official, from his waxed mustache to his polished boots that had never seen real ranch work. Ethan, she called, but he was already emerging from the barn, his face grim. The man approached the porch with the determined stride of someone delivering bad news. Mr. Cole, I'm Mr. Hutchins from First National Bank of Denver. I'm here regarding your mortgage. Clara stepped onto the porch, her ledger still in hand. Hutchins's eyes dismissed her immediately, just the housekeeper. His expression said, "What about it?" Ethan's voice held steady, but Clara saw his knuckles whiten where he gripped the porch rail. Hutchins withdrew a document bearing the bank's official seal in red wax. "This is your final notice. You have 60 days to bring the mortgage current, plus penalties and accumulated interest, or the bank will begin foreclosure proceedings." "How much?" Clara asked. Hutchins didn't even look at her. "Mr. Cole, the total amount due is $873.47. Ethan's face went pale. They'd raised $900 at the cattle sale, but ranch operations, supplies, and Clara's wages had already claimed over $100. The remaining sales wouldn't happen for another month. "May I see the documentation?" Clara stepped forward, her tone brooking no refusal. Hutchins finally looked at her, his expression irritated. "Madam, this is a private business matter between Mr. Cole and the bank. Miss Benton handles all Double C financial matters," Ethan said quietly. "Show her the papers." The banker's mustache twitched with disapproval, but he handed over the documents. Clara scanned them rapidly, her mind calculating. Then she frowned, flipped back 3 pages, and checked again. "Your arithmetic is wrong," she announced. Hutchins' face reddened. "I beg your pardon. Here." Clara pointed to a column of figures. "You've compounded the interest quarterly but calculated it as monthly. The actual amount owed is $612.31. That's impossible. Our head clerk made an error." Clara pulled out her pencil and worked the calculation on the back of the document. "See, you've been overcharging Mr. Cole by roughly 30% for the past year." Hutchins snatched the paper, studying her figures. His face went from red to white as he realized she was right. This will need to be verified at the bank." "Oh, it certainly will." Clara's smile was sharp as a blade. "And while we're there, we can discuss the bank's liability for fraudulent calculations. I believe there are laws about usury in this state. Now see here." "No, you see here." Clara descended the porch steps, forcing Hutchins to look up at her. "The Double C will pay what it actually owes, not a penny more, and will pay it in full within 60 days. The bank requires immediate payment. The bank requires legal payment according to the contract terms, which specify 60 days' notice for amounts in arrears." Clara handed back the documents. "We'll see you at the bank tomorrow morning to discuss a payment schedule. Good day, Mr. Hutchins." The banker left in a fluster of indignation, his buggy raising dust clouds as it departed. Ethan stared at Clara with something approaching awe. "You just saved us $260. I bought us time." Clara turned to face him, her expression serious. "But we still need to raise $600 in 60 days. The next cattle sale isn't for 3 weeks. And that won't be enough." Ethan slumped against the porch post. "Then we're finished." "No." Clara's chin lifted in that way he'd come to recognize her fighting stance. "We're just beginning. Come inside. I have a plan." In the kitchen, Clara spread papers across the table like a general planning a campaign. "First, the furniture. You have 14 completed pieces, at $50 each. No one will pay that much. They will if we market them right. Second, we pre-sell next spring's calves at a slight discount. Buyers lock in quality stock. We get cash now. That's mortgaging our future. That's ensuring we have a future." Clara pulled out another sheet. "Third, grain futures. The drought's breaking. I've been watching the weather patterns, talking to the old-timers in town. We buy grain contracts now while prices are high from scarcity. Sell when the harvest drops prices." Ethan rubbed his face. "Clara, I don't understand half of what you're saying." She reached across the table and grasped his hand. "Then trust me. The way I trusted you when you offered me dignity instead of servitude." Their eyes met and held. Ethan's hand turned under hers, palm to palm. You're asking me to bet everything on your knowledge. No. I'm asking you to bet on us. On partnership. Clara squeezed his fingers. We're stronger together than alone. You know cattle and land. I know contracts and numbers. Together we can beat them. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, studying their joined hands. Then he nodded. All right. Tell me what you need. The next morning, they dressed in their best clothes, Ethan in his father's suit, Clara in her dark blue dress with her mother's cameo at her throat. The ride to town felt like heading to battle. First National Bank of Denver's local branch occupied the largest building on Main Street, its brick facade and brass fixtures proclaiming prosperity and permanence. Inside, the marble floor echoed their footsteps as they approached the main desk. We're here to see Mr. Hutchins, Clara announced to the clerk, a thin young man with nervous eyes. Do you have an appointment? He's expecting us. Coal Ranch mortgage matter. The clerk scurried away, returning minutes later. Mr. Hutchins will see you in his office. Hutchins's office was designed to intimidate dark wood paneling, leather chairs that swallowed you, his massive desk elevating him above visitors. But Clara had faced down Barrett and his cowboys. One soft banker didn't frighten her. Mr. Cole, Miss... Hutchins paused, clearly having forgotten her name. Benton, Clara supplied crisply. Now, regarding the mortgage. She placed her ledger on his desk with a decisive thump. We've prepared a payment proposal. The bank requires full payment. The bank requires good faith effort and reasonable assurance of payment. Clara opened the ledger. Here are contracts for furniture sales to Denver merchants, totaling $300. Delivery within 2 weeks. Hutchins examined the papers, his eyebrows rising. These are from Fullerton's. They're the finest furniture store in Denver. Mr. Cole's work deserves the finest venues. Clara turned the page. Pre-sale agreements for spring calves. Another 200 guaranteed. But these won't be delivered for months, which is why we're offering a structured payment plan. Clara pulled out a detailed schedule. 100 immediately, which we have. 200 in 2 weeks from the furniture sales. The remaining balance in 6 weeks from cattle sales and grain futures. Grain futures. Hutchins looked skeptical. That's gambling. Miss Benton. That's business. Mr. Hutchins. Clara leaned forward. Unless you'd prefer we contact the Denver newspaper about the bank's systematic overcharging of mortgage holders, I've found 3 more calculation errors just in Mr. Cole's account. Imagine if someone examined all your mortgages. The threat hung in the air like a loaded gun. Hutchins's face went pale, then red, then pale again. You're trying to blackmail this institution. I'm trying to save a ranch while ensuring the bank gets its legal payment. Clara's voice remained level. Every penny legally owed, paid in full within 60 days. That's more than fair. Hutchins turned his calculating machine toward him, brass keys clicking as he worked figures. Clara watched his fingers, checking his math mentally. Finally, he looked up. If you miss a single payment, we won't. I'll need collateral beyond the ranch. Clara looked at Ethan, who nodded. The cattle herd, he said. All of it. And Mr. Cole's workshop equipment and furniture inventory, Clara added. Hutchins pulled out official bank stationery, his fountain pen scratching across the heavy paper. This is highly irregular. So is overcharging customers. Clara's tone was sweet as honey laced with arsenic. As they finalized the agreement, a small crowd had gathered outside the office's glass window. Word traveled fast in a small town. Ethan Cole and the Benton girl were in the bank, negotiating with Hutchins himself. When they emerged, signed agreement in hand, Clara heard the whispers. Is that really the fat Benton girl? Hutchins looked scared of her. Cole's letting her handle his money. But one voice cut through clearly. Harrison, the cattle buyer, talking to another rancher. That woman's got the sharpest mind in the county. Cole's lucky to have her. On the ride home, Ethan was quiet until they'd cleared town. Then he pulled the wagon to a stop under a cottonwood tree. Clara, what you did in there was necessary, was magnificent. He turned to face her fully. I've never seen anyone handle Hutchins like that. He's foreclosed on half the county, and you had him stammering. He's a bully who relies on people not understanding contracts. Clara smoothed her skirts, trying to hide her pleased flush. Bullies fold when confronted with knowledge. Is that what I am to you, knowledge? The question surprised her. What? This partnership? Is it just business? Clara's heart began racing. Is that what you want it to be? Ethan was quiet for a moment, studying his hands on the reins. 3 weeks ago, I wanted to be left alone to fade away with my ranch. Now, he looked at her. Now I wake up looking forward to coffee and conversation, to watching you terrify cattle buyers and bankers, to seeing you ride Buttercup with that smile that makes you look 18. Ethan, I'm not asking for anything to change, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know that this partnership means more than saving the ranch. It means saving me. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. You saved me first. From that platform. From my brother's betrayal. From believing I was worthless. Then we saved each other. Ethan picked up the reins. And now we save the ranch. Together. As they rode home, Clara thought about partnerships and trust, about two broken people building something whole. The next 60 days would test them, furniture to deliver, cattle to sell, futures to navigate. But sitting beside Ethan on the wagon seat, their agreement with the bank secure in her ledger, Clara felt something she'd never experienced before. She felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The Double C came into view as they crested the hill, its buildings golden in the afternoon sun. There was work to do, letters to write, furniture to prepare for shipping, cattle to ready for sale, but they would do it together, partners in every sense that mattered. Ethan, Clara said as he helped her down from the wagon. Yes. Thank you for trusting me. He smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. Thank you for being trustworthy. As they walked toward the house, Clara noticed he didn't release her hand immediately after helping her down. The touch lingered just a moment longer than necessary, a promise of possibilities beyond partnership, beyond business, beyond mere survival. But first, they had a ranch to save. Clara was reconciling the week's accounts when she heard the familiar creak of her brother's wagon wheels. Through the window, she watched Thomas climb down, his Sunday clothes incongruous on a Thursday afternoon, her stomach clenched with foreboding. It had been 6 weeks since the auction. The furniture sales had exceeded expectations. Fullerton's had ordered 3 more pieces after seeing Ethan's work. The first mortgage payment was made, the second ready in the bank. Everything was finally working. Thomas's knock was tentative, as if he wasn't sure of his welcome. Clara considered not answering, but Ethan emerged from the barn, having heard the wagon too. Mr. Benton? Ethan's voice was cold as December frost. Cole. Thomas removed his hat, fidgeting with the brim. I've come to speak with my sister. Then speak. Clara stepped onto the porch, not inviting him in. Thomas's eyes widened. She looked different, stronger, healthier. Her dress new. Ethan had insisted she buy fabric with her wages, her posture confident rather than defeated. Clara, you look... well. What do you want? Thomas. He shifted uncomfortably. I've come to take you home. Or rather, to a new position. Mr. Blackwood, you know. The big rancher from the North Valley, he needs a housekeeper. He's offering $20 a month. I already have a position. This is different, more respectable. Thomas glanced at Ethan. People are talking. Clara, you living here with a widower, no chaperone. It isn't proper. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm an employee with a fair wage in my own room. What's improper about that? Mr. Blackwood is elderly, established. His wife will be there as chaperone. It's a better opportunity. Better. Clara stepped forward, forcing Thomas to step back. Better than honest work with honest pay. Thomas's face reddened. Blackwood is willing to pay us a finder's fee. $50 if you come today. The truth hung naked between them. Thomas hadn't come out of concern for her reputation or with a better opportunity. He'd come to sell her again. So that's what I'm worth to you. Clara's voice was deadly quiet. $50. Be practical. Clara, you can't stay here forever. What happens when Cole doesn't need you anymore? When he remarries, you'll be back where you started, except older and with even fewer options. She has a permanent position here, Ethan interjected, his voice firm. Thomas laughed, an ugly sound. Permanent until when? Until the ranch fails. Until people refuse to do business with you because of the scandal. What scandal? Ethan's voice dropped dangerously low. Everyone knows what really goes on when a man keeps a woman like her. Thomas's eyes were cruel. Who'd believe nothing improper happens a lonely widower, a desperate spinster? Ethan moved so fast Thomas didn't have time to react. He grabbed Thomas's shirt front, lifting the smaller man onto his toes. Say one more word about your sister's virtue, and you'll be eating your teeth for breakfast. Ethan, no. Clara placed her hand on his arm, feeling the trembling fury in his muscles. He's not worth it. Ethan released Thomas with a shove that sent him stumbling. Get off my land! Don't come back! Thomas straightened his shirt, trying to salvage dignity. I'm trying to help her. Blackwood's offer won't last. I said leave. Clara, please. Thomas turned to his sister. Think about your future. You're not getting any younger or smaller. This might be your last chance at security. Clara looked at her brother, really looked at him. Saw the weak chin, the calculating eyes, the soul that measured everything in dollars and convenience. My last chance at security was the family farm, she said quietly. You gambled it away on bad investments and worse whiskey. My last chance at dignity was standing by family. You put me on an auction block. My last chance at believing blood meant something was thinking you came here because you cared. She shook her head. I'm done giving you chances. Thomas, you'll regret this. When you're old and alone, she'll never be alone. Ethan's statement was simple, factual. She's my business partner. The Double C doesn't run without her. Thomas's laugh was bitter. Business partner, is that what you're calling it? This time Clara didn't stop Ethan. His fist connected with Thomas's jaw, sending him sprawling in the dust. Thomas scrambled up, blood trickling from his mouth, and stumbled to his wagon without another word. As the wagon disappeared down the road, Clara realized she was shaking. Ethan's hand touched her shoulder gently. Are you all right? He's my brother. My only family. Her voice cracked. And he tried to sell me. Again. Clara, I need to check on the horses. She fled to the barn, needing space to compose herself. But Thomas had been right about one thing: people were talking. The next day, Clara rode Buttercup to town for supplies. The moment she entered Morrison's general store, conversations stopped. Mrs. Morrison, usually friendly, barely acknowledged her. The other women shopping turned their backs, whispering behind their hands. Only old Mrs. Chen, who ran the laundry, treated her normally. You pay no mind to jealous hens, she said quietly while measuring out Clara's flour. They wish they had your courage. But the whispers followed Clara through town, living in sin with that Cole man. Always knew she was desperate. Poor Margaret must be rolling in her grave. Clara kept her chin high, completed her purchases, and rode home fighting tears. She'd faced mockery for her weight all her life. But this was different. This attacked her character, her morality. Ethan was waiting when she returned, his face grim. Harrison told me what happened in town. It's nothing. It's not nothing. He helped her down from Buttercup, his hands lingering on her waist. This is my fault. I should have thought about your reputation. You gave me work and dignity, that's all. Is it? The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Clara couldn't answer, couldn't acknowledge what had been growing between them these past weeks, the lingering looks, the casual touches, the way her heart raced when he smiled. The situation reached a breaking point the following Sunday. Clara had stopped attending church since arriving at the Double C, unable to face the congregation's judgment. But Ethan insisted on going to town for a telegraph message about cattle prices. They were at the general store when Barrett arrived with several other ranchers. The cattle buyer's smile was malicious. Well, Cole and his, what do you call her, Ethan housekeeper business partner. Barrett's tone made both titles sound dirty. Miss Benton handles the Double C's accounts, Ethan said evenly. I'll bet she handles more than that. Barrett's companions snickered. The store went silent. Even Mrs. Morrison stopped pretending to dust shelves. Clara felt her face burn, wanted to flee, but Ethan's hand on her arm kept her steady. You know, Barrett continued, I offered Thomas good money for her services. He was going to bring her to me before Blackwood made his offer. Imagine, the fat Benton girl warming my bed. The crack of Ethan's fist against Barrett's jaw echoed through the store. Barrett crashed into a display of canned goods, tins rolling everywhere. Anyone else? Ethan stood over Barrett's groaning form, fists clenched. Anyone else want to insult the woman who saved my ranch, who took my books from disaster to profit in 6 weeks, who negotiates better than any man in this county? Silence. Ethan turned to address the entire store. Clara Benton is the finest business mind I've ever encountered. She's turned the Double C from near foreclosure to profitability. She rides, she works cattle, she manages accounts that would make your head spin. His voice rose. And yes, she lives at the ranch, in her own room, with wages paid proper, because she's my business partner, equal partner, as of yesterday. Gasps rippled through the store. Equal partnership was almost unheard of, especially with a woman. You gave her partnership, Harrison asked, stepping over Barrett. Signed and legal. 50-50 split of profits after expenses. Ethan's gray eyes blazed. Because she saved my ranch and my life. I was dying out there, drinking myself into the grave, letting everything my father built rot away. Clara brought me back, made me remember why living matters. He turned to Clara then, and the look in his eyes made her knees weak. She's worth more than every person in this store who judges her by her size instead of her spirit. More than every hypocrite who whispers about propriety while conducting their own affairs. Mrs. Morrison gasped at the implication, but Ethan wasn't finished. The Double C will continue doing business with those who treat Miss Benton with the respect she deserves. The rest can go to hell. He took Clara's arm and led her from the store, leaving Barrett still groaning on the floor and the town's entire social structure shaken. Outside, Clara was trembling. Ethan, what have you done? The partnership is real. I had the papers drawn up last week. He pulled the document from his jacket. I was waiting for the right moment to tell you. Clara stared at the legal document, her name beside his. Equal partners in the Double C ranch. But why? Because it's true. Every word I said in there. Ethan's voice was rough with emotion. You saved everything. Clara, the ranch, the business, me. I was ready to let it all go, to follow Margaret and Sophie into the dark. Then you arrived and suddenly there was light again. Purpose. Future. Ethan, I know what people think. I know what they're saying. But I also know what's true. He took her hands, there on Main Street where everyone could see. You're my partner. In business. In saving this ranch. In building something from ashes. And if you'll have me, in whatever else you're willing to share. Clara couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Behind them, people had emerged from the store to stare. Let them, she thought. Let them see that the fat Benton girl was wanted, valued, chosen. The rumors will get worse, she warned. Let them talk. They'll still buy our cattle and furniture because we're the best. Ethan squeezed her hands. Come home, partner. We have contracts to review. As they rode back to the Double C, Clara marveled at the word partner. Not employee, not burden, not charity case. Partner. Thomas had been wrong. This wasn't her last chance at security. This was her first chance at genuine belonging. The general store gossip would continue. The whispers would follow her. But they couldn't touch what was real, the partnership papers in her pocket. The ranch's growing success. And the way Ethan had said saved my life like it was simple truth. From the porch that evening, Clara watched the sunset paint the ranch gold. Ethan sat beside her, their chairs close enough that their arms occasionally brushed. No regrets? She asked. Only one. When she looked at him questioningly, he smiled. I should have punched Barrett harder. Clara laughed, the sound carrying across the ranch yard. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, cattle to sell, futures to manage, gossip to weather. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged on the Double C ranch. Equal partner in business and perhaps, soon, in something more. The peppermint stick Ethan had bought her at the store, a small defiance against the whispers, tasted like victory. The cattle pens at the autumn sale were packed to capacity, and Clara could feel the energy crackling through the crowd like lightning before a storm. This was it, the final sale that would determine the Double C's fate. They needed $400 to make the last mortgage payment, and they'd brought 40 head of their best cattle. Nervous? Ethan asked, standing beside her at the fence. Terrified, Clara admitted, clutching her ledger. What if the prices have dropped? What if Barrett convinces the other buyers? Then we'll handle it together. His hand briefly covered hers on the fence rail. Partner. The auctioneer's bell rang, and the sale began. Clara had coached Ethan on their strategy: hold back their best stock until the buyers were competing, then release them in calculated groups to drive prices up. It required nerves of steel as they watched lesser cattle sell first, establishing the baseline prices. Harrison approached during a break, tipping his hat. Miss Benton, heard you're full partner at the Double C now. Legal and binding, Clara confirmed. Smart move. Cole, Harrison said to Ethan, woman like this could run the whole county's cattle business if she had a mind to. When their cattle finally entered the ring, Clara's strategy proved golden. The buyers, seeing quality stock in limited numbers, began bidding against each other. Even Barrett, who'd kept his distance since Ethan had floored him, couldn't resist bidding on a particularly fine bull. 35 bull, Harrison called. 37, from Foster. 40, Barrett growled. Clara caught Ethan's eye and nodded slightly. He raised his hand to the auctioneer. Mr. Barrett's bid stands, but we're holding back 10 head for spring breeding. The crowd murmured. Holding back stock during a sale like this was bold, almost arrogant. You can't do that, Barrett protested. We can and we are, Clara said clearly. The Double C is rebuilding its breeding program. Quality over quantity. Mr. Barrett, something you might consider. The insult was subtle but hit home. Barrett's face reddened, but he completed his purchase without another word. By the sale's end, they'd raised $620 more than enough for the mortgage and operating expenses through winter. As the final tally was announced, Foster produced a bottle from his wagon. French champagne, he said, popping the cork. Been saving it for a special occasion. The Double C beating the bank seems special enough. And the other ranchers except Barrett, who'd stormed off, gathered around, passing the bottle. Even some who'd whispered about Clara's reputation raised the bottle in toast. Success, it seemed, commanded its own respect. To Cole and Miss Benton, Harrison declared, proving that brains beat brawn in the cattle business. Clara felt giddy, whether from the single sip of champagne or the victory. She couldn't say. She'd done it. They'd done it. The ranch was saved. The celebration was interrupted by familiar wagon wheels. Thomas approached again, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him sat Josiah Blackwood himself, the wealthy rancher who'd wanted to hire Clara. Blackwood was everything Thomas wasn't: tall, distinguished, with silver hair and clothes that spoke of money. He stepped down from the wagon with practiced grace, removing his hat as he approached Clara. "Miss Benton, I apologize for arriving unannounced. I wanted to speak with you personally." Clara tensed, feeling Ethan move closer beside her. "Mr. Blackwood." "I'll be direct. I'm offering you $30 a month to manage my household. My wife is ailing and needs a companion who can also handle the ranch's domestic accounts. Your brother tells me you're uncommonly skilled with numbers." $30. More than most men made. Security, respectability, a position in one of the county's finest homes. Additionally, Blackwood continued, there would be a cottage on the property for your exclusive use. A woman of your independence might appreciate privacy. He was offering everything: money, respectability, solitude, no whispers about impropriety, no concerns about the future. "That's a generous offer," Clara said carefully. "Clara." Thomas stepped forward, his jaw still showing the bruise from Ethan's fist. "Be sensible. Blackwood's ranch is established, secure. The Double C might survive this year, but what about next? What happens when the partnership dissolves?" "It won't dissolve," Ethan said firmly. Thomas laughed bitterly. "Everything dissolves. Cole, you of all people should know that. What happens to Clara when you remarry, when you have children who inherit? Where does she fit then?" The words hit their mark. Clara saw Ethan flinch, saw the doubt creep into his eyes. He'd loved Margaret completely. Who was to say he wouldn't love again? And where would that leave Clara? "I need time to consider," Clara said. Blackwood nodded. "Of course. I'll be at the hotel until tomorrow noon. Your brother can bring your answer." He remounted the wagon with dignity. "I hope you'll choose wisely, Miss Benton." After they left, the celebration felt hollow. Harrison and Foster made excuses to leave, sensing the changed atmosphere. Soon, Clara and Ethan stood alone by the empty cattle pens, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. "It's a good offer," Ethan said quietly. "Yes. Security, respectability, everything you deserve. Yes. You should take it." Clara turned to stare at him. "You want me to leave? I want you to be happy, safe, protected from gossip and hardship." Ethan wouldn't meet her eyes. "The Double C is stable now. You've taught me enough about the books. You want me to leave." It wasn't a question this time. "I want—" Ethan's voice broke. He turned away, hands clenched. "I want things I have no right to want. Such as, you know what?" "I need to hear it." Ethan was silent so long Clara thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, the words came in a rush. "I want you to stay, not as my business partner, not as my housekeeper, but as more. I want to wake up knowing you're there. I want to sit on the porch every evening talking about cattle and dreams. I want to build furniture for our home, not just any house." He turned to face her, his gray eyes bright with unshed tears. "But I can't offer you what Blackwood can. I can't promise security or ease. I can't even promise I won't wake up screaming from nightmares about finding Margaret and Sophie in their beds. Their faces—" "Ethan." Clara moved closer, close enough to see the pain etched in every line of his face. "I chose isolation after they died." He continued. "Pushed everyone away. Decided it was better to die slowly alone than risk caring again. Then you arrived, refusing to be pushed away, making me eat proper meals, making me laugh, making me remember what hope feels like." He laughed bitterly. "Thomas is right, though. What happens if I remarry, have children?" "Are you planning to remarry?" "How can I when—" He stopped, swallowed. "When the only woman I could imagine marrying deserves better than a broken-down rancher who talks to his dead wife's photograph and builds furniture for a daughter who will never use it." Clara's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. What if that woman doesn't want better? What if she wants exactly that, a man who loved deeply enough to break and is brave enough to try again? "Clara, my turn to talk." She took his hands, feeling them tremble in hers. "You want to know what I want. I want to stay where I'm valued for my mind, not tolerated despite my body. I want a partner who sees me as essential, not settling. I want to build something lasting with someone who understands that broken doesn't mean worthless." She took a shaking breath. "I've been rejected by every man who ever looked at me. Too fat, too plain, too sharp-tongued. I built walls so high I forgot what it felt like to hope someone might want me. Then you bid everything you had to give me freedom. And you've spent every day since showing me I have value beyond my size or my use." The sun was setting, painting the sky purple and gold. The champagne bottle lay forgotten in the dust. Around them, the town was settling into evening, but here by the cattle pens, time seemed suspended. "You're perfect for me," Ethan said suddenly, the words tumbling out like they'd been held back too long. "Exactly as you are. Not despite anything, not overlooking anything. Perfect. Your strength, your brilliance, your body, your spirit, all of it." Perfect. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. No one had ever called her perfect. No one had ever suggested she didn't need to be different, smaller, quieter, less. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out something that caught the dying light. Clara gasped. It was a simple gold ring, worn thin with age. "This was my mother's," he said quietly. "Not Margaret's. I buried that with her. This one my mother gave me before she died. Told me to give it to a woman who'd be a true partner. I've been carrying it for 3 weeks, trying to find the courage to ask." "Ask what?" "Stay. Not for the ranch. Not for the business. Not for anything but this." He took her hand, the one that had signed partnership papers and calculated profits and learned to guide Buttercup. "Stay and let me love you the way you deserve. Stay and let me prove every day that you're not settling, and neither am I. Stay and marry me, if you'll have someone who comes with ghosts and nightmares and a ranch that'll always need work." Clara looked at the ring, at Ethan's face, at the life being offered. Not security, Blackwood offered that. Not ease, there would be hard years ahead. But love, partnership, belonging. Being chosen not as a last resort, but as a first choice. "The ghosts," she asked, "will always be there, but maybe they can share space with new memories. The nightmares might fade with someone beside me. The ranch is ours, whatever comes." Clara pulled Ethan's face down to hers and kissed him, there in the dusty stockyard with the smell of cattle still in the air. It wasn't a romantic setting, but it was real and true and theirs. When they broke apart, both breathless, Ethan was smiling in a way she'd never seen, young and hopeful despite the gray in his hair. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes to all of it. The ghosts, the nightmares, the ranch, the ring, you." Clara held out her hand, watching as he slipped the thin gold band onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting. "Thomas will be furious," she said. "Good. The town will gossip even more. Let them. Blackwood's offer can go to hell." Ethan pulled her close, and Clara let herself lean into his strength. "I love you, Clara Benton. Not gratefully, not conveniently, not settling. I love you like I thought I'd never love again, wholly and completely and forever." "I love you too," Clara whispered against his chest. "Even when you're stubborn and silent and spend half the night in your workshop. Especially then. Especially then." They stood together as full dark fell, the first stars appearing overhead. Tomorrow there would be reactions to face Thomas's anger, the town's shock, Blackwood's dignified disappointment. There would be wedding plans to make, the ranch's future to secure, a life to build from the ashes of old pain. But tonight, Clara wore Ethan's mother's ring and felt his arms around her, and knew she'd chosen right, not the safe path, but the true one. Not security, but love. Not perfection as the world measured it, but perfection as Ethan defined it, exactly as she was. "We should head home," Ethan said eventually. "Home," Clara repeated, tasting the word like champagne. "Yes, let's go home." They climbed onto the wagon together, sitting close enough that their bodies touched from shoulder to hip. As they drove through town, Clara saw curtains twitch and faces appear in windows. By tomorrow, everyone would know that Ethan Cole had given the fat Benton girl his mother's ring right there in the stockyards. Let them talk. She had everything that mattered. Clara stood before the mirror in her room, but she wasn't looking at her reflection. Instead, she held her mother's cameo brooch, the one she'd worn to the auction platform 3 months ago. How far she'd come from that moment of humiliation to this morning, her wedding day. "You're not wearing the dress, Mrs. Morrison," sent Sarah, the young woman Ethan had hired to help with wedding preparations, looked confused at Clara's choice. Clara glanced at the ivory silk dress hanging on the wardrobe, a peace offering from the general store owner. Trying to mend bridges now that the Double C was thriving. It was beautiful, expensive, and completely wrong. "No," Clara said firmly, reaching for her blue cotton dress instead, the one she'd worn to negotiate with Barrett, to face down the banker, to accept Ethan's proposal. "This is who I am. This is the woman Ethan chose." Sarah helped her with the buttons, still puzzled. "But it's your wedding day." "Exactly, and I won't start my marriage pretending to be someone else." Clara pinned the cameo at her throat. "Besides, Ethan fell in love with me in everyday clothes, doing everyday work. That's the woman he's marrying." Downstairs, the main room had been transformed. The furniture had been pushed back. Wildflowers filled mason jars on every surface, and chairs were arranged in neat rows. Through the window, Clara could see wagons arriving more than she'd expected. A knock at the door made her turn. Harrison entered, hat in hand. "Miss Clara, there's quite a crowd gathering. Seems half the county wants to witness this." He grinned. "Ethan's pacing like a caged wolf. Might want to put him out of his misery soon." Clara descended the stairs to find the house fuller than she'd imagined. Not just Harrison and Foster, who'd agreed to be witnesses, but dozens of ranchers, townspeople, even Mrs. Chen from the laundry, and there, standing uncomfortably near the door, was Barrett. "What's he doing here?" Clara whispered to Harrison. "Came of his own accord. Said he had something needed saying." Before Clara could respond, the crowd parted, and she saw Ethan standing by the fireplace. He wore his father's suit, but his eyes were only for her. The look on his face, wonder, love, and something like reverence made her knees weak. Reverend Thompson cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" Clara walked through the crowd, noticing the expressions had changed from the mockery of 3 months ago. There was respect now, curiosity, even admiration. She'd proven herself with more than just marriage. She'd proven herself capable. When she reached Ethan, he took her hands, whispering, "You wore the blue dress. Is that all right? It's perfect. You're perfect." The ceremony was simple. When it came time for vows, Ethan surprised everyone by speaking without notes, his voice carrying clear through the room. "Clara, you came into my life when I'd given up on living. I was going through motions, waiting to fade away. You brought ledgers and laughter, efficiency and warmth. You saved my ranch, but more than that, you saved me." He squeezed her hands. "I promise to be your partner in all things business and personal, good times and bad. I promise to see you, value you, and love you exactly as you are, every day of our lives." Clara's voice shook as she responded, "Ethan, you bid everything you had to give me freedom, then spent every day since showing me I had worth beyond what others saw. You gave me purpose, partnership, and love I never thought I'd find. I promised to stand beside you through drought and plenty, through memories both bitter and sweet. I promised to help you build new dreams while honoring old ones." When Reverend Thompson pronounced them married, the cheer that went up shook the rafters. Even Barrett clapped, though he looked like it pained him. At the reception, as Clara and Ethan cut the cake made with real white sugar, a luxury after the drought, Barrett approached. "Mrs. Cole," he said formally. "Mr. Cole, I owe you both an apology." Clara nearly dropped her cake plate. "Mr. Barrett, I underestimated you, ma'am. Tried to cheat you. That was wrong." He shifted uncomfortably. "My wife, Elizabeth, she's been after me about it. Says any woman who can turn a failing ranch profitable in 3 months deserves respect, not ridicule." "Thank you, Mr. Barrett," Clara said carefully. "There's more." Barrett pulled out an envelope. "Wedding gift. It's a contract for exclusive buying rights to your spring calves at premium prices. If you're willing." Ethan started to speak, but Clara touched his arm. "We'll consider it. Mr. Barrett, thank you for coming." As Barrett retreated, Harrison laughed. "You've got him trained already, Clara." "Not trained," Clara corrected. "Just realistic about good business." The celebration continued into evening, but Clara noticed one absence. Thomas hadn't come. She tried not to let it hurt, but Ethan saw her scanning the crowd. "He might come around," he said gently. "And if he doesn't, then we're still complete." 6 months later, spring had transformed the Double C. Where drought had left bare earth, green grass now waved in the breeze. The barn had been repainted, the fences repaired, and a new sign hung at the ranch entrance, "Double C Ranch, Cole & Cole, Proprietors." Clara stood on the porch, one hand on her expanding belly, the other holding the latest letter from Fullerton's Furniture. They wanted 12 pieces for their summer catalog, specifically requesting the rustic elegance that has become Mr. Cole's signature. "$20 says it's a boy," Harrison called out as he rode up with Foster and, surprisingly, Barrett. "50 says it's a girl," Foster countered. With Clara's brains and Ethan's stubbornness, "Either way, that child will be running the county's cattle business by age 10, Barrett said, dismounting. Clara smiled. Barrett's transformation had been gradual but genuine. His wife Elizabeth had become a friend, and their business relationship was now honestly profitable for both sides. "Gentlemen, what brings you out today?" Clara asked. "Need your opinion on the new breeding stock from Denver," Barrett said. "You've got the best eye for bloodlines in 3 counties." Even at 7 months pregnant, Clara still managed the books, negotiated sales, and rode Buttercup to check the nearer pastures. Ethan had worried at first, but Clara reminded him that pioneer women had been working while pregnant since the frontier began. "Let me get my ledgers," Clara said, then paused as another wagon approached. Her heart clenched. Thomas. Her brother looked older, thinner, humble in a way she'd never seen. He climbed down slowly, hat literally in hand. "Clara," he said quietly, May I speak with you?" Ethan appeared in the doorway, protective, but Clara nodded. "It's all right, gentlemen. Ethan will show you the new stock. Thomas, come inside." In the kitchen, Thomas stared at his coffee cup like it held answers. "The farm's gone," he said finally. "Lost it to drink and bad decisions. I've been working as a hand at the Sawyer place." "I'm sorry," Clara said, meaning it. "Don't be. It's what I deserved." Thomas finally looked up, and Clara saw tears in his eyes. I sold my sister. Twice. Treated you like property instead of family. Thomas. No, let me finish. Mother would have horsed-whipped me for what I did. You were the one who kept us going after she died. And I repaid you with betrayal. He pulled out a small wrapped package. This was Mother's. I know you should have had it when she passed, but I pawned it. Took me 6 months to earn enough to buy it back. Clara unwrapped it carefully, gasping at what lay inside. Her mother's wedding rings, the ones Clara thought were lost forever. I can't undo what I did, Thomas continued. But I wanted you to have these, and to say, you were right to choose this life. You're happy here, valued, loved. He stood to leave. That's all I wanted to say. Thomas. Wait. Clara stood too, awkward with her pregnancy. Stay for dinner. His eyes widened. After everything, we're family. Broken. Complicated. But family. Clara touched her belly. This child will need an uncle. A better one than you've been, but one who understands that people can change. Thomas broke down then, sobbing like the boy Clara remembered from childhood. She held him awkwardly, this broken man who was all the blood family she had left. When Ethan returned with the other men, he found the siblings at the kitchen table, Thomas helping Clara with the ledgers while she explained her new system for tracking bloodlines. Thomas is staying for dinner, Clara announced, meeting Ethan's eyes with a look that said, trust me. Ethan nodded slowly. Then he's welcome. 3 weeks later. The ranch office, once a disaster of scattered papers, now gleamed with organization. New ledgers with coal embossed in gold lined the shelves. Maps of expanded pastures covered one wall, and contracts for furniture and cattle sales filled a neat filing system. Clara sat at the desk. Despite Ethan's protest that she should be resting, her pregnancy was in its final weeks, but there was work to be done. Barrett's offering 20% over market for exclusive rights to our Hereford crosses, she told Ethan, who was carving delicate flowers into a cradle's headboard. What do you think? I think we counter with 25 and a 3-year contract. Ethan smiled. Do it. And a photograph from their wedding sat on the desk, not a formal portrait, but one Harrison had commissioned from a traveling photographer who'd caught them laughing at the reception. Clara's size, Ethan's scars. None of it hidden. Just 2 people who'd found each other against all odds. The cradle's beautiful, Clara said, watching him work. Want it perfect for our little one. Boy or girl. Doesn't matter. Ethan set down his tools, crossing to stand behind her chair, hands resting on her shoulders. They'll be raised knowing their worth isn't in their size or appearance, but in their character. They'll know their mother is the finest business mind in the territory and their father knows how to build beautiful things from broken wood. Clara leaned back against him, feeling the baby kick. Outside, she could hear the ranch hands working, cattle lowing, life continuing its rhythm. The house Margaret and Sophie had once filled with love now held new love, different but equally real. I've been thinking about expansion, Clara said. That pasture land to the south is for sale. Of course you have. Ethan laughed, the sound rich and full. What would I do without you? Probably still be eating cold beans and losing money to Barrett. Definitely. He bent to kiss her temple. Clara. Thank you for taking a chance on a broken-down rancher. Clara turned in her chair to look up at him. Thank you for seeing me as more than what everyone else saw. I saw the truth. Still do. As sunset painted the ranch golden, Clara thought about the journey from that auction platform to this desk. The woman who'd stood trembling while crowds mocked her now controlled one of the county's most successful ranching operations. The man who'd wanted to die with his grief now crafted furniture for the future. Thomas visited weekly now, slowly rebuilding their relationship. Barrett brought his wife for dinners where they discussed breeding programs and market trends. The Double C had become not just successful but respected. We did it, Clara said softly, looking at their entwined names on the ledgers. We actually did it. No, Ethan corrected. his hand covering hers where their wedding rings caught the light. "We built something perfect from broken pieces." Clara smiled, feeling the truth of it in her bones. They'd each been broken by life, her by rejection and betrayal, him by loss and grief. But instead of trying to hide the cracks, they'd fitted their broken edges together, creating something stronger than either had been alone. The baby kicked again, and Clara knew this child would grow up understanding that perfection wasn't about meeting the world's standards. It was about finding where you fit, who values you, and building something lasting from whatever pieces life leaves you with. The Double C Ranch stood as proof that broken didn't mean worthless, that fat didn't mean unlovable, that grief didn't mean the end. It stood as testament to partnership, trust, and the courage to bid everything you have on giving someone else their freedom. As stars began appearing in the Texas sky, Clara and Ethan sat together planning their future: more cattle, more furniture, more life to build on the foundation they'd created. The fat girl nobody wanted and the broken widower who'd given up on living had found each other, saved each other, and built something perfect from broken pieces. The ranch house settled around them with contented creaks and sighs, holding their love as steadily as it had held previous loves, proving that some things hope, home, and hearts brave enough to try again never truly break. They just wait for the right hands to rebuild them. Sometimes the most profound acts of gratitude aren't spoken in grand speeches but lived out in daily choices. Clara and Ethan taught me this, that saying thank you means less than showing up, staying present, and building something lasting with someone who saw your worth when the world didn't. I've watched people search their whole lives for family and blood relations who'd sell them for $50 and a clear conscience. But Clara found family in a broken widower who bid his last cent on her dignity. Ethan found family in a woman the world dismissed as too much, who turned out to be exactly enough. They chose each other not from desperation, but from recognition. Two souls saying, "I see you, all of you, and you're home." The Double C Ranch stands now as more than a successful business. It's proof that families aren't just born. They're forged in auction dust and mortgage fights, in teaching someone to ride despite their fears, in opening preserved peaches because love means using the good things now, not saving them for someday. Every perfect thing we build comes from broken pieces. The trick isn't finding unbroken people, it's finding those whose broken edges fit with ours.